Hi everyone, it's Brittany from the New Carnegie Library, and welcome to another edition of Carnegie Cooks. This is our special monthly collaborative edition with Carnegie Chats, our Instagram and Facebook book club. It's super easy to participate. Just head to our Facebook or Instagram pages, and there's lots of posts that can give you all the details about it. So today's recipe will be inspired by our May selection, which is Little Women. This is our wonderful large print copy here at the Carnegie. This is one of my favorite books. Honestly, I can't even remember the first time I read it. I just feel like it's something I've always known, and I love it so much. And there's so much great recipe inspiration from this book, from Marmie's birthday cake to Joe's failed attempt at a meal, to what inspired our dish today. So today we're going to be making apple cheddar hand pies. Yum! I loved as a kid the idea of Hannah making the girls hand pies to keep their hands warm. I grew up in Ohio, and I just loved the idea of having a snack that would also keep me warm. I just thought that was just so fun. And then I love the scene at, towards the end after the apple harvest where the girls are getting ready and preparing dishes with those. So I thought I would combine those, add a twist of cheddar, because who doesn't love cheese? So let's get started. To my food processor, I've added 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. If you don't have a food processor, you could also use a mixing bowl and a pastry blender for this, or a 2 forks would work. Basically, however you make your pie crust is how you're going to want to do this. Then I'm just going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. When our flour and salt are combined, we're just going to close up our food processor and pulse it a few times to combine. It's time to add 6 ounces of freshly grated sharp cheddar cheese. Usually I'd say use the shortcut, use the pre-grated stuff, but this, because the cheese is acting as our fat and really holding it together, you really don't want to take that shortcut with this. And it only takes a few minutes to do it by ourselves. I think we just get it in our heads. And if you're looking at an 8-ounce block, basically you're going to use 3/4 of it. I'm going to pulse it about 3 times so it's all mixed together. And now we're going to add in our 6 tablespoons of ice water, and then mix until it's crumbly and starts to form together when you press it together. So as you can see, it starts looking kind of curdy, and then when we press it together, it'll stick together. Just finished. What I've done is just taken a big piece of plastic wrap and laid it on my counter, and then dumped the mixture out onto it, formed it into a square, and now I'm just going to tightly wrap this plastic wrap around my dough. And once it's all wrapped up, nice and tightly sealed, then I will pop it in my fridge for a minimum of 30 minutes and up to 2 days. To make our filling, I have 2 small Granny Smith apples peeled and cubed in my bowl, and I'm just going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of lemon juice, a 1/4 cup of packed light brown sugar, but you could also use dark brown, use whatever you have. And because we're essentially making an apple pie filling, I wanted to add some of those warm spices that are so good. I'm going to use cinnamon and nutmeg today. You could add allspice. You could add a little bit of ginger if you want. If you have a favorite apple pie recipe, feel free to season it however you like. I want to keep it fairly simple for these hand pies, so I don't do too crazy. So I'm just going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and a little sprinkle of nutmeg. A little nutmeg goes a long way. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to combine all this together and let it hang out, let those apple juices start flowing from those sugars. And then we'll add our flour right before we fill the hand pies. It's been about 12 hours. I've let my dough chill completely. And I've just prepared a baking surface. You could use a clean work surface. I actually like to use wax paper just to help with the cleanup and to help with it to not stick. I just keep it down with a little bit of water. I just wet a paper towel and kind of use it like glue, and it stays on pretty well. And then I floured it, put my pastry on, and I've cut it into 4 even pieces, and I'm going to roll it out into about a 6 by 6 inch square. Okay, so to roll one out, I wanted to show you how I did it. I first just took my square and made it a little bit more square in hopes of getting a square shape. If your dough doesn't come out perfectly square, you can see this one's really nice and square, this one's kind of oblong, this one's kind of round. It's totally fine. I'll show you how to fold them. It's a hand pie. It's supposed to be rustic, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but in our goals, for it to be as close as possible. Form it into more of a square shape, and then you're going to want to roll it out and then turn it a 1/4 turn each time as you roll. until it's about 6 inches across. So if your edges start to crack like this or over here while you're rolling, just pinch them together and keep rolling and it'll work out just fine. I'm gonna finish our filling. As you can see, the sugars have really brought a lot of the juice of the apples out. We just wanna add some thickener to this so it's not super runny when we bake it. So we're just gonna do that by adding 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So there's 1. And 2, and then we'll stir this up, and then we'll be ready to add the filling to our pastry. You don't want to do this when you add all the spices and the sugars because then you won't get as many of those good juices out. Fill our pastry. As you can see, I've done a nice diagonal line, mostly towards the middle of our filling, and I have a kind of a square pastry here, so I'm going to just fold it over like this in a diagonal. And kind of gently press it down with my fingers before I take a fork and I crimp the edges. So we can trim these little excess edges so it looks a little bit prettier. And if your dough starts to crack, as you can see here, just pinch it back together, it'll be totally fine. And now I'm just going to try with one hand to cut 3 little slits at the top, just to allow some steam to escape, and so our pastry can be nice and flaky. And I'm going to add this to a prepared baking sheet. You can either use a silicone mat, parchment paper, one of my faves, or foil with some nonstick cooking spray on top. I want to show you how to fill one if it's a little more round or oblong. Instead of doing it diagonal, just do it horizontally, and you'll be able to fold it the same way, almost like you're making an omelet, and then seal it the same way we did the square one. All right, folks, as you can see, they're all ready to go in the oven. I have my oven preheated at 375. I'm going to start checking them in about 26 minutes, and then they could go as long as 35 minutes. My oven cooks pretty hot, so it'll probably be ready right about then until they're nice and golden brown. As you can see, I was out of parchment paper, so I had to go the tinfoil route, but it'll work just fine. And as you can see, it really helps just make them look beautiful if you clean up those edges with a knife. I promise you can hide most imperfections, and even if not, again, it's a hand pie, so it's supposed to look a little rustic. All right, let's get these in the oven. Let you'll know if you have any leftover apple mixture, throw these in a saute pan, cook them up, and then you have some great breakfast cinnamon apples. So yummy, and they'll thicken right up because you have that flour in there. All right, everyone, we're all finished. Take a look at this beautiful pastry. I'm so excited to dig in. Look at that filling, yum. So you immediately get that sweet apple pie filling, just sweet enough with a little bit of tang, nice little hints of cinnamon, and then the cheese crust starts coming in. And it just gives a really nice savory component, really nice highlight with the cheese. And look at this crust, it's so flaky from the fat of that cheese. Yum! I hope you give it a try. Cheers!